Hi, and welcome to the Business of Forging Agreement. Today we are doing a masterclass in the Introduction to the Rewrite. My name is Lenore Sterner, and I am here with my associate, John Worthington. And we are going to be going over the information that's presented in the Introduction to the Rewrite. I have taken this class before, approximately 6 years ago, but I would like to learn how to teach it and go into all the ins and outs and why we talk about these things in the order that we talk about them in. So,
Okay, what a good idea.
yes.
Better late than never, as they say, right? Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. 6 years later, we got around to it.
Okay. All right.
All right. So
why don't we start at the beginning then?
that sounds like
at the beginning really is like this, kid.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why we want to present this particular, we'll call it a class, but I'm not sure that it's really a class. It's an information set, we could say.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason, though, why it exists. And the reason is that most of us have programs that we don't understand because we don't understand the complexity of the program. We don't understand how the program works. We understand that it's a program, but we don't know what kind of program it is. And by kind of program, I mean we don't know whether it's an app or whether it's a meta program, or we really don't know what the dickens it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we wanted to present a way of people to see how they could, let's say, rewrite a program so that they could have access to the ability to rewrite all or part of a program anytime they wanted to. So they could go find their code and rewrite their program. And so the idea here is that we give you some do's and don'ts about what you should include and what probably isn't going to work so well if you do include. And at the end of the day, we want you to be able to take this data and say, okay, let me apply this to things that work for me, don't work for me, whatever. That's the whole idea of the program. Not that we're going to program anybody, because quite frankly, I don't think you can. And if you think you can, I think you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. So I think that really the idea of rewriting a program is a pretty personal thing. We can guide people with it, but we can't really tell them much about what to write for themselves.
Okay.
Okay, so the beginning of the program, the beginning of this set of data, we kind of go over we call it the rules of engagement. Okay, in other words, when we're presenting this information to the public, or to a group of people, even if it's one-on-one, there are certain rules of engagement that have to be pretty much adhered to, or there's not really going to be any exchange of information. And so I think that the first one of those is called blame, is it not?
It is, yes. So let's bring that up on the screen here.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Ooh, that looks nice.
And we'll do this. How's that? There you go. Okay, so let's go. There we go. The blame game, huh? You see, here's the thing. What we do whenever we're confronted with a program, and we all do this, it's not a bad thing or a good thing, it's a human thing. We tend to blame something or some other person for why it is that we've done the thing that we've done. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that doesn't ever work. And so one of the first things we want people who are going to reprogram or want to address programs is we want them to remove blame from their thinking altogether. And the reason for that is that it isn't that blame doesn't exist. It's that if you take it out of your thinking and you don't allow yourself to blame somebody else for what you do, then what that does is that it kind of makes you the center of that behavior. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
In other words, if I do something and I say, well, the reason I did it is because you made me. Well, that can't be true, because you can't actually make me think a certain way or say a thing a certain way. I mean, you can force me to put a gun to my head and go, John, behave. And I probably will do what you tell me, right? Maybe. But the thing is that you can't really change how I think about it. I'm the only one who can do that. And so what we want people to do is voluntarily suspend their need to blame somebody else for their behavior. In other words, we don't want people to say, you made me mad. That doesn't work. Oh, I'm so happy because you're in my life. It doesn't really work. It's not true. There's a whole bunch of things like that come around that we blame other people for. See, and it's like we can say, I'm happy because you're in my life. Whenever I'm around you, you make me really happy. Or I get frustrated because of how you do things, but I can't really say truthfully that you make me whatever. Okay, just take your pick of any of the thousands of emotions that you could make me do. Right? You can't. I'm the only one who can do that. So that's the first thing. That's the first rule of engagement. What's the next one, kid?
The next one has to do with responsibility.
Yes. Well, this is one that people, you hear people say things like, they say, I'll take responsibility for that, or you're not going to make me responsible for that thing. You hear that go on. You can't. You see, the thing is that we tend to misuse that word responsibility in the society. And so as an instructor, you want to be aware of that so that you can start to get people to look at the concept that what they're doing is that they're who's responsible for themselves. I always use this silly illustration of I can't pee for you, or you can't pee for me. In other words, if I ask you, Lenore, I really gotta go. You can't do it for me, right? You
Nope.
just can't do that. I'm the only one who can respond for me. It's like when the doctor lifts your eyelid up and he shines a light in your eye. And your eye dilates or doesn't. If the eye doesn't dilate, well, you're not responding. If it does dilate, you respond. And so responsibility is the word. Do you have the ability to respond for yourself? Well, if you did the thing, you responded for yourself, I think. I don't think anybody else did it for you. Now, you may have an obligation to show me where the bathroom is. That's a different idea, obligation. But responsibility is all mine. I have to get to that bathroom and, do what I have to do on my own. And if I don't, no one's going to do it for me. So that's the second part of that concept of blame and responsibility, you see. Those two things kind of go together. I can't blame somebody else for what I'm responsible for. Okay. So we have those two ideas joined in this presentation so that you can see what that is, right?
Right.
We want people to have a visual of even the puppy dog having to sweep up after himself because he made the mess. He's cleaning it up.
Yes.
If only puppy dogs did that.
It would be helpful.
Yes, but they're just not very responsible when it comes to that thing, I'm afraid. So what's the next part here that you want to examine?
Dichotomies.
Yes, dichotomies. We have here an illustration of two different ropes of two different colors. And so we could say there's a black one and a white one, and they're opposite of each other because one's black and one's white, right? But they're not. They're the same. One just happens to be painted black, and one happens to not be painted at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, we have lots of those kinds of things that we have in our lives, and none of them exist really. Like salt and pepper. They're not dichotomies, they're not equal opposites, they're just simply both condiments. Man and woman. Men and women are really the same, it's just different expressions of humanity. They may be opposed to each other, but they're not equal or opposite.
Okay.
Okay? They're two distinct, different ideas or expressions of the same concept. Up and down, let's see. Well, that's a real one. Well, not really, it's just relative. Up is relative to down. Okay, in other words, in terms of altitude, you're down from where I am right now, even though on the map, you're up from where I am right now.
It's like my grandma always says, we're going to go down to the mall or up to the mall. And that just depends on which mall we're going to.
Yeah, okay. But you see that, to your grandma, that makes sense, okay? Because it's a relative concept from where she is, right?
Right.
And so the thing is that we have all these dichotomies in our thinking and in our language. We really do. We have tons of them. Okay. How about good and bad, for instance? Are you good or are you bad?
I'm neither. I'm human.
Okay.
I try to be good
true.
more than I should.
Okay. Well, see, that's the thing, is because you're still wrestling with this. I'm trying to be good. You're not. You're not bad either. You're just you. You exist. And so that's the reason why we want to take that out of things. How about right and wrong? Who's right, you or Colby?
I mean,
that's the reason why in the Dyad class we have that statement, right? Out beyond good doing and bad doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. Okay, we want to get people past the goods and the bads, and the rights and the wrongs, and so forth. For instance, if somebody, that lion that's over there in Africa.
okay.
When he goes down to the Serengeti Super, is he good or is he bad? Because he comes back with a half of gazelle.
He just is, because he needs to eat.
Well, see, it depends. See, if you're a gazelle, he's a bad lion. If you're a lion, he's a good lion. It's a relative concept. It is not a concrete concept. And so my friend Lenore tends to try to be a good girl. Compared to what?
Compared to...
See, that's the problem. See, that's the problem with good and bad, of all the dichotomies. See, they're comparatives. They are not equal and they're not opposite. They are opposite on a scale, but they are not. That doesn't make them actual opposites. It makes them scalable ideas. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so a dichotomy. Okay, you flip a coin. Is it heads or is it tails? Well, it's the same coin. One side of it's heads and the other side's tails. Does that mean that they're dichotometric? No, it doesn't. It means it's the same thing. It's just different aspects of the same idea.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the reason why we want to hit this, because people get confused about this concept, you see. And so if you're going to write a program, you can't be writing a good program. You can't be writing a bad program. You can't be writing I'm going to be better program. You can only write a program. Does it work or does it not? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's for you to find out, and only you. I can't decide that.
Okay. All right. I am with.
Okay. So that's the whole thing with presenting this concept here is to say to people, look, you're not good or bad. You're not right or wrong. You haven't been a this thing or that thing all of your life. You've been alive. That's it. That's all. That's all that's going on. You've been alive and you've been human and you've done things. You've had experiences. Now, some of the experiences you wrote the program for that experience in a screwy way. Other ones you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're not right or wrong or good or bad. They're simply your experiences that you've experienced a certain way. And it's like maybe you could rewrite that program so that it worked better for you. Because when you wrote it, you probably didn't have as much experience as you do now.
No.
So rather than painting it in goods and bads and rights and wrongs, what we want to do is we want to paint it in a, well, let's say a comparative or relative manner. That it worked, we could probably improve this. That would be a comparative, right? We could probably make this work better for us. That's a comparative. We could probably change that line of code and it would be more efficient. That would be a comparative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea. That's the reason why we want to present the concept of dichotomy. Okay. What's
Gotcha.
the next thing you've got there?
Internal and external reality in balance.
Yes. Well, that one's one that people just they just don't get, I guess. And that's the reason why we want to talk about it kind of here.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you can't say, well, I feel as though I'm right. That's an internal thought.
Okay.
Can you show me where you're right or where you're correct or where you're improving in the external reality?
No.
Or is that thing that you're talking about only in the internal reality? You see, they have to be in balance. And we have to present this concept to people so that they can see it. Because we don't stop and think about that often, right? We say, okay, well, I feel a certain way, or I think this thing, or I've decided, or what? I can't be. You can't do. Are you gonna let me speak? We agree to disagree. All those kinds of silly things. Well, the reason why that we have to present this is so that people can see a way of having a balance between the internal reality and the external reality. They have to balance.
Okay.
It's like the columns on the income and the asset and debit columns in accounting. They have to balance.
Okay.
You understand? Okay. The same thing is true in thought. It has to balance. If it doesn't, there's a hitch in the get along.
Okay.
So what we're trying to get people to see here is that we're trying to get them to take a peek at that some of the things that they do to themselves simply because they don't think about that balance.
Okay.
Okay. Why did you get mad about that thing? Because you made me do la la. Okay, going back to a thought here.
Okay.
That's not in balance, is it? See,
No.
the reality and the external reality, and the external reality, I can't make you. There's no mechanism for me to adjust. Let me get in here with my little screwdriver and make this. It won't work.
Mm-hmm.
There's no buttons to press, no nothing. So in the external reality, I can't make you be mad. So if I'm talking about mad, I have to have that internal external reality in balance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's one. My mother never loved me.
Oh, poor
No,
you.
no. See, that's what a silly statement you're making. You're assuming that that's a true statement that I'm making. You're not pointing out to me that that's not in balance with the external reality. In the external reality, mothers love their children. I don't care if it's a bear mother or a deer mother or a human mother or what. Mothers take care of their children.
Yep,
It's
absolutely.
hardwired, and it's hardwired into the mothers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get between a mom and her kid and tell the mom that kid's doing something bad, or that kid or mistreat that kid somehow or the other. Well, what'll happen? I'm going to get mad at you. She's going to rain on your parade, because that's an external reality. Okay, that's a
Mm-hmm.
real thing in the external reality. Now, here's somebody lives their life saying, "My mother never loved me." Oops. Rules of engagement says that yes, she did, because you have to have that balance there. Why are you telling yourself that? You don't know my mother. No, I don't. I'm glad I don't. Or maybe I'm not. Did she not like you? I can see why. Maybe I'm beginning to warm up to her a little bit already. Are you with?
I am with
Okay.
that example
So
in particular. Sorry, go on.
that really kind of gets to your something for you, does it?
Yeah, because I used to think that way about my mom, and then I had kids and
Uh-huh.
experienced it, and it's like, holy shit, you weren't lying.
Who knew? Well, you see, this is the thing that we want people to see, and it's like we don't care necessarily whether they get it this moment.
Mm-hmm.
What we care about is that we give them that piece of information so that when they can get to it, they can apply it or not, depending on how their mother actually is. But we already know that mothers are hardwired to love their children.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't care really what somebody's saying about that, because the part of the entity that we're talking to isn't consciousness or isn't the memory. It's the self-meta programmer, which we'll get to after a bit. But we're not talking to the conscious part that says, "My mommy doesn't love me," because that's a 3-year-old talking to himself, okay, or a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old or something, okay. So
Okay.
we need to find that internal external reality thing. My daddy mean. I scared of him because he mean. Well, maybe he is. And maybe you need to be scared of him. Maybe he's trying to tell you something about growing up. He not telling me nothing about growing up. I just don't like him because he mean to me. See, that's not an internal external reality balance there, because your daddies are the same as mommies. They're hardwired to love their children.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever know Jerry Kaminsky?
No, unfortunately, I never had that opportunity.
Yeah. Jerry was in two of the World Trade Center buildings that collapsed. Two of them collapsed on him on 9/11. Two of
Oh,
them.
wow.
And the first one the cops dug him out of because it was in the center of it, and the building fell around him. And the second time he ran across the street and hid under a fire truck, and they had to dig him out of that. After that, he retired from the Port Authority, and he went over to New Jersey where he lived, and he worked with some fire departments over there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the thing that he hated worse than anything else in the world was to go to a fire in the winter, when mom and dad had gone to the pub or gone to the bar to drink, and left the kids at home, and they started playing with matches and lit the house on fire. Because when somebody went and told them at the bar that their house was on fire, they were going to come back and they were going to try to run into that burning house. And the firemen would have to tackle them and hold them down to keep them from going into that burning building.
Mm-hmm.
Parents are hardwired to love their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You got to have that internal external reality in balance. Why waste your life on something so silly? Something made up, something fanciful. Because even the those two drunk people coming home and trying to run in there, they still love their kids.
Mm-hmm.
You got it?
Yeah. I don't know why I'm tearing up right now. But I get it.
Good.
Okay.
These are heavy thoughts, kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, what's the next thing you got there?
Fantasy is not welcome.
Oh, for unicorns and bluebirds of happiness. Look, what happens to people is that they kind of get in their fantasy worlds, and we kind of got to bring them back out of that somewhat. See,
Mm-hmm.
one of them is kind of like this. In almost every introduction class I get, what I've ever done, not everyone, but there are a lot of them. There's always some young man that stands up and when it gets to what goal are you going to write for yourself? One of the things they always do is they say, "I wants to be a shaman," and that's pure fantasy because the guy that has no idea what a shaman is. I mean, Christ,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what a shaman is. I've never met a shaman. That was before my time. And I don't know what those are. I suspect that I know what they were, but it's not what people say they are or were. It's not. They're just not that. I don't care what kind of story they told about what it is that they were doing. That doesn't necessarily make any sense. Some of the stories they tell are pretty fanciful. And so we don't really need those fantasies in the story and in the reality. What we need facts.
Mm-hmm.
We need actual, real facts. Not like Claire Shug. Okay, my dad used to say about Claire, her mind's made up and she don't want to be confused with no facts. She was a forerunner. Claire was a forerunner to Karen's, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Because people sometimes get things in their mind that they think is true, and they don't really stop and think about it. They start just going off at the mouth about it without finding out where it goes or what it's about. You with?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So we wanted to keep fantasy out of all these proceedings. So we don't want to talk about fanciful ideas. We don't want to talk about, can you really move your assemblage point? Oh yeah, I'm an expert. No, you're not. There's all kinds of stuff that people talk about they can do when they can't.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of things people think they think they're skilled at when they're really not, because they're not really expressing themselves. They're expressing the fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Many times we even try to do things that are fantasies.
Okay.
We try to say, well, we're gonna. Not just in the bedroom. I mean, we do that with all kinds of things, with driving, with how important we are at work, with how important we are in general, with how smart we are, how dumb we are. Or there's all kinds of stuff like that. It's just a huge list of things that's just a fantasy. And it's like it's easy to get caught in. It's easy to say, oh yeah, this is what. Oh, all those kinds of things. It's fun to do, but it's still a fantasy. If it's recognized as a fantasy, I don't care. I don't care whether you have a Walter Mitty life. That's fine. But to live there all of the time, that's not very productive. So let's do something different. Okay? What's the next thing you got there, kid?
The structure of programming.
Yeah. You see, this is one that people, speaking of fantasy, this is one of those things that people just really do not understand. They don't.
Okay.
Because you hear somebody, this is true for a lot of ladies, for instance. They'll say, okay, I feel as though that I'm correct about whatever. You can feel as though I'm correct about, and then you can fill in the blank. Okay, it doesn't make any difference what that is. And the reason why that they do that is because they can't see the structure of programming. They just can't. It's like looking down into a well. You get up the top of the well and look down, it's hard to see how deep it is because you can't really see the bottom, can you?
No.
Even if you throw a rock in there, you wait for a while. Jesus, how deep is that? Wow, it's deeper than I thought. Well, the reason why that takes place is because we don't have a way of looking at a side view of our programming. Now, it wasn't until maybe 65 or so, 1960, 50, in the 50s and 60s, that humanity actually began to, the first logarithmic program, I think, was written in the 18-somethings by a lady, I think, Abigail somebody or the other, I can't remember her name now. But that was the first time in human history that a computer program was ever considered. And we've only had smartphones that where it was something that the populace could see and enjoy and so forth since about
2010,
2006 or so, or 10. And so we've only got 15, 16 years of time with actual computers being held in our hands. So to be able to think about our brains as computers was not something that was available to anybody who went before. They had to look down into the well from the top. And, they were got lowered down in there on ropes and in the bucket and all sorts of stuff that came back with wonderful tales. And it took generations of time for some of them to be able to figure out what we were doing and what we were about. And they were pretty accurate about it too, by gollies. But, they didn't have a computer language to be able to explain it to anybody. And so they tried to find other ways of explaining it. Okay. And so it was really difficult for people to see how a program actually worked. So the first thing we need to understand is that programming starts with a code, just like it does on your smartphone. It on your smartphone, it has an operating system.
Yes.
On the computer, which we're using to communicate, both those computers have operating systems. Now, that operating system could be thought of as that red cube up there in that picture. Okay?
Okay.
But if you'll notice carefully, there is a little blue cube that's in the bottom left-hand corner of that cube that you can see.
Okay.
And that blue cube is an error, we're going to call it. An error in the code.
Okay.
Just like if there was an error in the code in your computer. It would be transferred then up to the next level, which would be the metaprogram level. Now, to think about a metaprogram, you want to consider, first of all, that metaprograms are programs which control sets of other programs. Now, we're going to cover this some more in a little bit, but that's what they do. So right above that code, the red code cube, there are four meta programs. Let's call those word processing. Let's call it graphics. Let's call it data processing, and let's call it spreadsheets. Okay.
Okay.
But you'll notice that each one of those cubes up there, those gray cubes, have a little blue cube in them too, because it was transferred from the code up into the meta program. And so when we got up into the applications, which is the next level up, then all of the applications that those programs control also have that same little blue error in it, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And if we go up into the logic system, which is the detailed programming, the carrying out of the instructions of the applications on the computer screen, as it were, it too has that same code or error in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that code starts with the operating system in the computer itself. And so why we want to point this out is that all of us made mistakes in our code writing when we were 3 years old, when we were learning how to write our beliefs in real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people don't understand that. So when we present this material for them, when we present this data for them, then we want them to be able to have an opportunity to consider that.
Okay.
We don't want them to say that it's the God's own truth. We want them to be able to think about that, because even if they were to think about it as though it may be true, or even as it may not be false, okay, what will occur is that thought will continue, because it's not false, it's actually the way things are. That thought will continue to grow because they'll find verification of that thought in lots of different things that they do. It may take years, it may take a week, it may take a day, it may take an hour, it may take 17 seconds. But it's going to take place because they're going to see it, because it's how things are. We actually have an operating system which we call beliefs in real. We actually have meta programs that we call emotions. We actually have applications which we call feelings. And we all know that, by God, we're logical motherfuckers. All those things are true. And so as we see where those things are true, and we see that there's an error in the coding, then we want to say, okay, how do we rewrite that? Well, that's what this class is about. It's about how we can do that in the human biocomputer. So the thing is that not all that we don't, that blue thing can be something that is just a misnamed idea. It can be an actual error that we commit all the time. It could be any number. It could be there's 1,000 things it could be. But some of them are just innocuous, and some of them really need to be rewritten so that we can get along with folks better. But this is the structure of programming. It goes that way. It goes from the belief out. It doesn't go from the logic down. It doesn't. People have a lot of trouble believing that or understanding that, because they can only look into the well from the top. But even in a well, the water comes from the bottom, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Yes, it does. And it comes up from the bottom. Well, that's the same thing that's going on here in the computer. It's coming from back in the day, because you started off with a blank computer. You have a machine. We call those machines babies. They can't speak. They have absolutely no instructions on how to behave. I mean, they can't control themselves. They're babies. And so what they do is they have experiences, and for every experience, they write a program. And every program that they write due to that experience becomes a blueprint for how they write other programs about those same kinds of experiences. We all do it. We've all done it. Even though we weren't aware of it. We didn't have to be aware of it. It takes place anyway. Okay?
Okay.
Well, You understand why that's necessary in the presentation at this point then, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
what's the next thing you got then, kid?
The brain waves.
Well, the reason why I add this into the class is to appease reason.
Okay.
Okay, it's true, but I really want reason to think. I don't want reason to stand up and say, "How do you know that that's the way that the programs are really written?" Well, I mean, I know because that's how we grow. But I want them to think about it from a different standpoint. I want them to think about it in terms of accepting it as though this might really be true. It's something they need to think about. So I include brainwaves here because the brainwaves tend to follow, in terms of development, the cycles per second for every year that you grow. I don't know why that is. I can't prove that it's true, but if I present it here as a, let's call it as a effective theory. Do you know what effective theory is?
Actually, no. What is an effective theory?
Okay. Our idea of gravity is an effective theory. It's not what really happens because. Okay, we say, okay, the Earth is pulling the apple to the ground, which is true. It looks like to us, and so we can calculate it and do all kinds of stuff. And the theory is effective. It's not a true thing. It's just an effective theory. What's actually happening is space and time is being warped around around the Earth, and so the apple is moving in that same line, except it's following the warp of the space-time continuum, and it's falling into the Earth. It just falls into it.
Okay.
It doesn't really. The gravity doesn't pull it near as much as. Anyway, it's an effective theory. It's easier to deal with it from there. You with? Okay.
I'm with. Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, this is an effective theory then, from the same perspective. Delta exists pretty much in our thinking from about 0.5 cycles per second to about 3.5, 3.8 cycles per second. And that corresponds roughly with the years of age that we have. Okay. There are other cycles, to be sure, and there's some of them do amazing things and so forth that was not on this chart, and we're not really worried about those things. We're just trying to present a way for people to consider how their thinking works. Okay. So back down there in Delta land, and Delta is associated with what's normally called the reptilian brain, or often called the reptilian brain. Okay. It's down in the hypothalamus and way down in those parts of the brain that develop early on. That let us learn how to walk and to balance and to stand up and to all those kinds of things. Okay, those are all learned responses that are held there and pretty much in that delta brainwave frequency. Okay, and in that lower part of the reptilian brain too. Okay. The next one up is theta, which is roughly from 3.5 to 7. That's the general stretch. Some people make it from 4 to 8, so, and it doesn't make any difference really. It's in that range. It's in that kind of space in between 3.5 and 7. And that's where we're learning emotions. I mean, and you see that in children. Okay, it doesn't line up exactly, but you'll see that in kids as they begin to learn to talk and so forth. What's the first words that they learn? No. Why? Because they hear that all the time. Kids walk into no, don't you get no, I told you no, and they'll keep on doing the same thing even though you tell them no, because they don't understand why they shouldn't do the thing. If you can stop and say, don't do that because you see this will happen if you do it, eventually they'll figure it out. But if you just tell them no, they may continue to do it forever. But that's the first thing they learn, and so they talk about it from that perspective. They say no. Are you with?
I'm with.
Okay. So the thing is that those are emotions. We're learning how to move the body. We're learning how to respond for ourselves in an emotional manner. You know, you'll see kids of that age sitting down in the middle of the floor in the Safeway saying, "Mommy, I wanted the Captain Crunch." You know, kids do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their favorite football team loses and they cry about it because, you know, it didn't go the way they wanted it to. Those are emotional responses. And so it's like we learn those in those ages. And so we have to make those mistakes to learn what to do properly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Above that is alpha. And by the way, the reason why it's known as alpha, it's the strongest of all the brainwave frequencies. And so it's how they figured out whether people during World War I were alive or dead after they got shot in the head when they stuck their head up above the level of the trench. They would actually take the electrical, you know, that you read electrical current with, and they touched the brain with it, and if it showed a current, then they were still alive. If it didn't, they were dead. And it was an alpha current that they read. That's the reason it's called alpha. It's the first one discovered.
Oh, okay.
So alpha, and this is also, it's in the center of the spectrum, and so therefore it's the strongest, and it's one of the reasons why we tend to think that our feelings, which is all about that alpha space, why that's necessary and so important to us, because that's
okay.
In your computer, you've got to have a lot of space for all the apps, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You don't need so much space for the code. You don't need so much space for the meta programs, but boy, do you need space for the apps, because you're going to go to the apps to do everything. You're going to do your WhatsApp, you're going to do your Messenger, you're going to do your emails, you're going to do your Slack, you're going to do your Trello, you're going to do your StreamYard, you're going to do your graphics, you're going to do your photos, you're going to do your selfies. Oh man, everything's going to take place in those apps up there in alpha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, of equal importance is how much stuff can you put up on the screen at the same time? Your logic. In other words, if you've got a big art program up, you better have some memory that you can use, because if you don't, you're not going to put much art up there.
Mm-mm.
It's going to eat up whatever memory you've got, right? So you got to have a big space up there in that beta for dealing with the real time internal external reality. So you got to have lots of circuitry up there, lots of memory space. And so that's the same thing that happens in the computer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in program theory, one of the things that we talk about is that there's only one computer, right? You just got the one thought processor. That's it. You don't have two. You just have that one.
Right.
And so you either make it efficient or you don't, because every thought that you have in there is dividing that computer up. So we want people to take out dichotomies, for instance, because that divides it in half, and then in half, and then in half, and in half. We want to take the blame out of it, because that keeps us from ever repairing any of the mistakes that we've made. We want to take responsibility. We want to say, okay, I'm responsible for what I do and what I don't do, so that we're not blaming somebody else. We want to have a balance of internal and external reality, so we're not wasting space on something that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Okay. So we need to understand how the programming is structured so that we can do that, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yep.
Damn, I hate when that happens. What's the next thing you got up there, kid?
What do you perceive?
Well, I see Sandra Bullock just loud and clear, don't you?
I see a face. Maybe Sandra Bullock's face, but it's definitely a face.
Not maybe. It's Sandra Bullock's face. Okay, and I'll guarantee you that what you're really looking at is you're looking at some trees, a couple of birds, and some adjusted art in the clouds that show eyes and that kind of stuff for Sandra. Okay.
Okay.
But you perceive the face.
Mm-hmm.
There's no face there. I mean, there is. But if you examine the parts of that, there's no face. It's you don't see eyes. You see a tree with leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you see birds flying up there for a nose or something. I can't remember now. It's too far away for me to see at this distance here. But you understand what that's about, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, do you think that we perceive things often? Things that aren't really there?
I would think that we do it all the time.
We do. Now, do you think that people think about what they've perceived as being real or unreal?
I would think most of the time, no.
That's right, they don't. And so consequently, they perceive that they are right, and that they are wrong, and that they are good, and that they are bad, and that they are loved, and they are not loved, and they are accepted, and they're rejected, and they're befuddled and bemuddled, and they just don't know whether to shit or go blind. Because they have perceived those things.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't stopped to examine why they perceived it. They're not good or bad because they perceived it, but they have perceived it. And that perception is based on perhaps an error in the coding.
Okay.
What if that were true? What if the reason why we see faces is because we weren't aware that was something that was programmed into us? For instance, you should understand this at this point. The first thing that a baby does is that baby will find eyes. A newborn baby laying in the bassinet in the hospital will look for eyes.
Okay.
And you can lock eyes with them. You can be walking past them and you can lock eyes with them because they're looking for eyes.
Mm-hmm.
When my grandchildren were born, I checked that out. They look for eyes. I mean, they're little bitty baby people wrapped in pink and blue blankets in the bassinet in the hospital. Mom hadn't been able to get out of bed yet, and that baby looking for eyes. It'll lock right into your eyes. You look at them. If you see a baby on the street, that baby will look at you in the eye if you look at him.
Yes.
Okay? Because we are hardwired to find eyes. Now, that's a perceptual bias that we all have. You understand? So, but we want to point that out to people when we're taking them through the rules of engagement of writing a program. We want them to understand that what they perceive may or may not be real. It may be a real perception, but what they're calling it, what they're perceiving it to be, may or may not be an actual real thing. It's like I may perceive that's Sandra Bullock's face, but that's not Sandra Bullock's face. I just perceive it to be. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep, I'm with.
Okay. Okay, what's the next one you got up there?
The degrees of logic.
Oh my. Most of the time, what people do is they say, yes, I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right. You and Colby do that, right? I mean, you're fighting about something. Oh, you're always got to be right.
Yeah, I've been there. Once or twice.
Yeah, everybody's been there once or twice. Some people have been there 3 and 4 times, actually, believe it or not. Well, there are other degrees of logic besides right and wrong, or this way and that way, or true and false. And so let's just reduce them all down to true and false, okay? Just for something to do here for a second.
Okay.
If we do that, if we just look at this as from the true false standpoint, not as a dichotomy, but as it's either true or it's false, okay? That's not really a dichotomy. It is, but it isn't really. It's really a comparative to what to external reality, internal reality, etc. Okay.
Okay.
We can buy some time if we deal with just another level of logic, as though it might be true, as though it might be false. In other words, if I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm Colby and I say, well, maybe what she's saying is true. Now, let me think about this for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe what she's saying is false. I think it's true, but maybe I should listen for it some more to see if it's maybe false. That buys you a little bit more time to examine the issue. Then you can go to, what's the next one? Oh, yes, as if it may be true. Or that's the next level, as if it may be true, as if it may be false. I'm not saying that it actually could be. Well, maybe. It could possibly be one day out there somewhere, maybe under certain circumstances, perhaps, which is kind of non-committal in lots of ways, but nonetheless, it buys you some time to consider something before you go, stomping off into Never Never Land, saying it has to be this way or that way. You with?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And then you come down to the end of it, and it's like, as though it may not be false. There's a possibility it may not be false. Just, I don't think this is true at all, but yeah, maybe it's fault, and maybe it's not false. It's like listening to Trump talk about the election, right? Everybody saying, well, maybe yes, or maybe it's not false. Well, we know damn well it's false, but we all say, well, maybe it's not, because we want to be fair about it, right? And so what that does is that buys us even more time to examine something. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why these levels of logic are included, is so that we buy enough time that we can actually consider whether these things are this way or not this way.
Mm-hmm.
You with?
Yep, I'm with.
Okay. So what's the next one you have there?
The proof of the theory.
Yeah. Well, I think that what we've been doing here is we've been going across going over the rules of engagement. And so now we're getting into some of the things that are actually true that we want you to think about in terms of what it is that has to be true for you to rewrite a program. And the first one is what?
Communication.
What's the first one? Communication. In order for a program to be rewritten, you have to be able to see it. And if it's in use, you can't see it. And so you have to be able to have communication about it. And without the communication about it, you're blind. Now, communication is what? An exchange of information between metaprogramming entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's it say? Tell me what it says.
Well, the first says the process of the exchange of information between two or more minds. And then it says communication.
Oh, wait, stop.
Okay.
Stop.
Stopped.
Okay. Explain to me what you think that says.
So.
Just that part.
Just that part?
Yep.
So it's saying that there's...
Go ahead.
It's saying that there is an exchange of information. It doesn't say it's verbal information.
It's saying that it says it's a process.
A process. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I told him. That's not a process. I told you not to do that. That's not a process, is it?
No, because that just stops. Communication.
It's the process of an exchange of information between minds. Well, I told you isn't a mind. And you don't know whether you've talked or communicated with a mind either, do you?
No.
Oh, well, Miss Instructor Person, if you're not paying attention to the minds that you're instructing, that you're communicating with, what instruction are you giving them?
None at all.
Oh, isn't that cute?
No. Okay, I'm with.
Okay, so that, yeah, it just slows you right on down to have to think about it. It's a process of an exchange of information between minds. Now, what else does it say? What's the second level of definition?
The process of exchange of information between metaprogramming entities within two or more computers.
Oh my. That complicates it just another notch or two, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, here comes. Remember, the process is still in place. It's the process of an exchange of information, which doesn't mean that you just say it, between metaprogramming entities within two or more or computers. It says, but we could add biocomputer to this easily enough. Okay, and for purposes of this conversation, we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. Because we're exchanging information between two biocomputers at the level of what? Self-metaprogramming. Metaprogramming entities. Entities that are capable of metaprogramming.
Okay.
Entities that are capable of writing word processing programs.
Okay.
That are capable of writing graphic programs. They're capable of writing data processing programs and spreadsheet programs, for instance. At that level, not at the level of, oh, I have a cute little app that you can use to see whether or not your date's going to like you or not.
Okay.
See, that's a different thing, right? I feel as though that you could speak it on fine. Feel as though. Metaprogramming entity, an entity that has the ability to metaprogram. That's where communication must take place. And so here you are talking to somebody in logic, and you're calling that a communication. Isn't that cute? Oh, you're so smart.
Okay.
Doesn't work that way, see? Because those people that are sitting there in front of you, they're listening to what you're saying. You need to be able to get this information into the metaprogramming level of that entity.
Okay.
Now, if you could, let's go to the next definition, which is going to be even more helpful here, I think.
Information.
Mm-hmm.
The calculated mental results of the reception of signals from another mind and the computed composed context of the next reply to be formed into transmissible signals.
Explain that to me, too, would you, please?
So it starts the calculated mental.
You are going to communicate. You are going to communicate information, right? And you have a good definition of information in your mind, do you?
Nope.
Then you're just a damn fool? Is that what you're telling me? You're just an empty-headed little girl that's just being good? Ooh. So let's go
Okay.
through what information really means. Can we do that one?
Yes, I think that would.
Okay, let's do that one then.
Okay. The data received, computed, and stored resulting from the reception of signals by a metaprogramming entity from another computer and the computed data in the ready state in the same entity for 1 second. Our pictures are covering it up.
Okay, it's okay. I don't mind. No, you haven't explained the first part yet.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood
Oh,
what you were saying. I
I
apologize.
know. There was an exchange of information, was there? See,
No.
you didn't clear that up for yourself. See, I'm not responsible for your data. I'm not responsible for your calculation. I'm responsible to point out to you that you don't have data and you haven't made a communication. That's what I'm responsible
okay.
for.
Okay.
You want to go again?
All right. I will go again. Okay. So it starts with the calculated mental results. So,
So you have to understand what it is I'm saying, you mean?
yes. So
See,
that would be
that's what that'd be a calculated mental result, is understanding, right?
right
Okay.
of the reception of
Well,
signals.
okay. So are you listening or are you just nodding your head up and down saying, I hear you?
I'm listening.
Okay. Great. Then you're receiving signals then, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. What's the next part? Keep going with that same sentence. What else does it say?
From another mind.
Okay. So you're listening to another mind. Hi there. How you doing? Our mind. Your mind. Look at that. We're minds. Okay. Keep going.
And the computed composed context
Of what?
of the next reply to be formed into transmissible signals.
Oh my goodness. You mean I have to have an answer? Or it's not a communication? I have to be able to respond for me? I have to be responsible for what it is I'm going to say about this, you mean? I can't just sit and say, well, you said.
Okay. All right. I'm with.
That's good.
I think this is the first time I ever put it together about response and responsibility.
Yeah, well, that happens in the very best of families, I hear. Okay, keep going.
And then the next one, information, the data received, computed, and stored, resulting.
Wait a second. And what? And stored?
And stored.
Oh, I don't know if you really did. When did you tell me that? I don't remember. I must have been spacing out, man. Wasn't any communication at all, was there?
No.
We'll come back to this in a few minutes, but go ahead. After that, then what?
Resulting from the reception of signals.
Okay.
By a metaprogramming entity.
Oh. by a metaprogramming entity. You make me feel bad when you say that about me. I don't know. Why did you say that? It hurt my feelings. Was there any communication there?
No.
Can't be.
Because it's not at that level.
Well, it's being denied at that level. Okay, so it can't be there. It has to be out, that field out beyond right doing and wrongdoing, huh?
Right.
Okay, what else does it say then about that?
From another computer and the computed data in the ready state in the same entity. So that would be
transmission to. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, explain it.
So that would be the understanding part.
Uh-huh.
So understanding what is being communicated.
And not only that, you have to store it. And like my friend Paul says, the best way to remember something is to understand it. If you understand why they're saying it, then you don't have to remember it. You understand it. It's in use now.
Gotcha. So that's why I didn't hear the response part of responsibility until now, because I didn't have the understanding. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
I'm following.
Fair enough. Okay. Keep going.
In the ready state in the same entity. So if it's in the ready state, then it's in use.
Yeah, that's right. It's in use. Now.
Okay. For transmission to another computer through a similar set.
Right. In other words, if you understand it, you should be able to explain it to, in other words, if you understand what you and I are talking about, you should be able to explain it to Colby so that he can understand it.
Okay.
And if you say that you understand it and you can't explain it to him, then you don't.
Gotcha.
By this definition, you only understand when you can explain it to somebody else, kid.
So that's why you say to us, can you explain that to me?
All the time. Explain me to it, please.
Yes. Okay. I believe I am following now.
That's wonderful. You got another definition that goes along with this?
Yes.
Oh my, look at this. This has got several thingies here.
The mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, the entity comprising all of the, at least potentially, self-detectable processes in a brain. So that would be, so if it's self-detectable, that would be what we're able to, that would be what we're able to see?
Nope.
Or what's been pointed out to us?
Nope.
Okay.
Can it be detected? That's what it says. If it can be detected, not if you've detected it, if it can be detected. If it's at a level of complexity that it's detectable.
Okay.
It includes all of those processes, even the ones that you haven't taken into account. And so that means your emotional responses and your feeling responses and the code that wrote it, all those responses to your beliefs in real, all of those parts are the mind. not the parts that you
Okay.
cherry pick. I am this thing, and that's all that I am, and you shall not tell me any different. Thank you very much. What a silly cow.
Okay.
It's the whole damn thing. All of it. That's what the mind is. Every bit of it. The reptilian brains that we're not part of, that we don't pay attention to, the digestive tract, all of it. It's all interrelated. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Which are at such a level of program complexity as to be detected and at least potentially describable in programming language.
Ooh, if it's potentially describable in programming language, it's part of the mind. Oh my goodness, I can't stand it any longer. Why do you do these things to me? Why? Keep going.
The self the self meta programs within the brain.
Yeah. In other words, if it's a program that you yourself have written, it is a self meta program. Okay. And self meta programs are, by their very nature, beliefs in real.
So, this explanation or definition of the mind is essentially the upside down pyramid showing this is all a part of it.
That's what it is, yes. Okay.
Okay.
You have a second definition coming up here?
Yes. A form of metaprogram in the software set of a very large biocomputer, which organizes metaprograms for the purposes of self-programming and of communication.
Ooh. In other words, this metaprogram set in this huge biocomputer, one of the things that we can talk about the mind being is that it metaprograms itself and it communicates information. And if you're just running off at the mouth, you're not doing any of those, and especially if you're telling me that that's how you think about it.
Okay.
Gracious sakes, what an awful, awful thing. So we want people to stop and consider that they have this level of awareness, whether they pay attention to it or not. Mm-hmm. Now, in actual reality, one of the things that I talk to people about with this is I talk to them about the concept of it being, consciousness talks to itself. The self-meta programmer doesn't. It simply acts.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you were talking to us about the other night, actually.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right, I'm following. Okay. Now we have the last one here under the mind. The computer brain detectable portion of a supraphysical entity tied to the physical biological apparatus the remainder of this entity is in.
The soul, spirit, God region. That's how it ends. Okay. In the actual class, and I just want to touch on this. No, don't go anywhere. On the actual class, I pretend as though I don't really want to discuss this.
Okay.
I said, well, this is talking about the soul and so forth, but we don't want to get into that now. And the reason I don't want to do that is I don't want to elicit anything for reason to argue with. But I want to lay it in there so that it's sitting there marinating. Okay.
Okay.
Because this is the essence of what it is you're going to talk with people about, and this is the essence of why they're in front of you, and this is the essence of why they're taking the class, and this is the essence of why they're going to rewrite the program or two. Because it's the portion of the brain that's tied to that extra physical entity.
Okay.
If it's not tied to that extra physical entity, you're not talking to it anyway. There's nothing to communicate. It's just empty. It's an echo chamber.
And that would be a fantasy?
Oh, that's called life? That would be a fantasy, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here, let's pause this one right here for a second and check. You want to do that? Just see how real it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a physical connection with your daughter? You do, don't you? You pick her up, you hug her, you change her diaper, you feed her stuff and so forth.
Yes.
Do you have a spiritual connection with your daughter?
Yes.
Oh. That's the one you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that you're going to use to pay attention to who that little girl is and who she becomes and what she goes through and so forth. That one. Not the rest of them, just that one. Because that's the entity that we're going to talk about, that communication of information takes place with. The rest, nothing else counts, just that one. Even though those other definitions exist in the class that you're going to do, you're not talking to those other levels of communication. You're only talking to this one. And if you think that you can do it without talking to this one, well, you're whistling Dixie. It ain't happening.
Gotcha.
Now, maybe now you can understand the story of Elise and Lisa going to the radio station to find out the information.
Oh.
I found that hilarious.
Okay. All right.
Because they didn't understand that they were communicating information at this level.
Okay. All right.
You with?
Yep, I'm with.
Okay. So, in the class, you want to talk to all those three levels of mind, all those three definitions of mind. But in particular, you want to make sure that this level of mind, this one that's connected to the extra physical entity, the non-biological part of it, is connected to that spiritual part, we call it, is the one that you're talking to throughout everything that you do in the class and everything you do associated with floating, with all this kind of stuff. It's that entity that you communicate with whom you communicate. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. You got some more there?
Yes. The definition of a program.
Yeah.
A set of internally consistent instructions for the computation of signals, the formation of information, the storage of both, the preparation of messages, the logical processes to be used, the selection processes, and the storage addresses, all occurring within a biocomputer a brain?
An app.
Okay.
The definition of an app fits this definition, does it not?
It does, yes.
Okay. And so the thing is that the app is not the computer. The app is not the communication. The app is the app. But it is a program that does all of those things. In other words, it is a program that controls the movement of or the action of a particular set of things for that computer. A particular set. A set. Okay? Okay, now what's the second definition there?
All human beings, all persons who reach adulthood in the world today are programmed biocomputers. No one of us can escape our own nature as programmable entities. Literally, each of us may be our programs, nothing more, nothing less.
What a sobering thought, huh? So here I am as a 3-year-old, or as a baby up to 3.5, 4 years old, and I'm writing a code that I don't understand for the rest of my life. And so I rely heavily on mom and dad for the vast majority of that code, because they're the ones who influence that code more than anyone else, right?
Right.
But I think that I have decided what I have written. I've decided based on what I want. And what I want is, by definition, a program, not a meta-program, not even a self-meta-program. It is simply a program which I have given importance, that I have perceived as important, in other words. Sandra Bullock is my God. I've perceived her in the trees and in nature. What do you mean I'm being childish? I saw her with my own eyes. That can't be a program, can it? I experienced it as real.
Man, I just had a light bulb go off in my head about this. How
I think that was a Craig light. Go ahead, kid.
Well, I've spent a lot of time thinking about parenting and how to be a parent for my daughter.
Sweetie. Have
Yes.
you been talking to yourself a lot about this?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my. That sounds like fun.
Oh, it didn't get me anywhere.
It's not going to, more to the point, it's not going to get anyone else anywhere.
No.
So here you are talking to yourself about how important your apps are. What a colossal waste of fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, somebody's making you suffer through all that, of course. Yeah. Wow. What internal and external reality balance are we talking about here? I'm talking to myself. What else do I need? Let's not call it thinking if it's not thought, really, shall we?
Okay.
Let's be fair with ourselves. See, that's important to me, I think. I think we need to be fair with ourselves.
Okay.
Not that you're not being a bad girl. You're not doing anything wrong. You're being a normal, everyday, red-blooded American person, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so you made this error. Did you see this before? No, you didn't.
No.
Until right now, this very moment, you couldn't see a lot of this stuff because it wasn't information that was available to you in the ready state for transmission to a third metaprogramming entity. It probably still is not a calculated response, as it were, is it?
I have to think about it, so I'm going to go with
Well, it's not yet calculated. It's not yet information for you, see? It won't be information until you can respond, until you can come back and respond to me about this stuff here. So you want to give it a shot here?
Okay.
Okay. So in your phraseology, you would say that you were thinking about parenting, I think is what you said, right?
Right.
Okay.
But I was just talking to myself. I was talking to myself about parenting.
Okay.
And the light bulb that went off for me is that Layla, my daughter, is going to be an adult who is a programmed biocomputer no matter what I do.
That's right. And guess what? She's going to write the program.
Yep, not me. And that was the light bulb, like, shh, woo.
Okay. Not only is she going to write the program, not you, she's going to perceive what needs to be written.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to see Sandra Bullock.
She's going to see something.
Well, no, let's go ahead. Let's give her. She's not stupid. She knows, and let's pretend as though she knows who Sandra Bullock actually is. So she's going to see that really, because it appears to be real to her.
Okay.
Because with her level of experience, that's a face that she recognizes. It could be Lenore's face in there. It could be Colby's face in there. She'd still see it as that face, and she would identify it as being that thing. Because she hasn't yet read Krzyzewski, and she doesn't know that the word is not the thing.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know that yet. See, that's the problem with perception, is that we think that the word is the thing. What do you see there? Well, the thing I see there is Sandra Bullock. I see a face. Well, that's not what you see. You are perceiving a face. What you see is you actually see some trees and a bird and some Photoshop clouding. That's what you see. What you perceive is a face.
Ah, okay. All right.
See, it takes some time even with the explanation, it takes some time to see it clearly, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Somebody that you sit down off the street, they're not going to be able to calculate this fast. They just aren't, because these are bigger ideas than what they appear to be. I mean, these are enormous concepts that we all use all the time. We don't realize that we're using them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make us bad people. It doesn't mean that we're stupid or anything. It just means that we have expertise in other areas.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Boy, that changes how you think about programming a little bit, doesn't it?
Just a little bit.
Okay. You got another one of these things? Let's see. What's the next slide you got there, kid? Oh, we start with goals. Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's stop it right here.
Okay.
Because this is quite a bit. This is quite a bit to calculate, right?
It is. Yes.
Okay. In an actual class, if you get to this point in a day, you will see people with glazed over eyes because they can't calculate this much information all at one time. They don't have that kind of practice.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to access the self-meta-programmer at these levels.
Mm-hmm.
Even somebody who's floated regularly is going to have trouble being able to calculate at this pace. Now, they may say that, oh yeah, I've got all of this, but let's see you put it in practice. Show me.
Like me over the past 6 years. I hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what happens. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean anybody's bad you're not a dumb girl and you didn't do anything bad. It's just taken this long for all this stuff to filter through and marinate and you to figure out how to make recipes that work for you and all that with this information, with this data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because it isn't data it's on the conscious level, even though you try to fit it into that conscious level box. We all do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not conscious level data. We're talking about deep levels of mind here already. We're down into beliefs and real here.
Mm-hmm. So we can't think about it in consciousness, period.
Nope. Consciousness comes way after all this stuff here that we're talking about. Consciousness is a result of what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
That's the reason why we say that you have to understand the data. You have to understand information, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to communicate information so it can be understood even at this level. And it has to be consistent from the level of belief all the way out to the level of external reality. It all has to balance. It all has to not just rhyme, it has to actually be in balance.
Oh, okay.
We don't think that's necessary, but it is. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
So what we're really doing in the intro class when we're communicating with the self meta programmer, and what we're really doing is getting that information in there so it can marinate so that we can start to understand.
Yes.
Is that
and we
okay?
We want to see people be able to get to that place where they can begin to calculate with it. See, now oftentimes they'll oftentimes get very frustrated about this because this flies in the face of what they think is real.
Okay.
You with?
Yep, I'm with, because I've been there and I've gotten frustrated, so I know.
Uh-huh. It's a common occurrence. People find this frustration. They say, "Oh, damn, what happened here?"
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so let's hang this up for this time, and then we'll pick it up for the next time around. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So this is good. As I understand it, we're going to put this together as a series. Is that your understanding of this? That this is going to go together as a series that you can purchase, or what is that the idea? Or somebody's already purchased what they're listening to here? Is that what you understand?
That is my understanding.
You see, in real time, to cover this much material would probably take 3 or 4 hours because people have to digest it, and you've got to pay attention to each person digesting it. You got to go through your people in front of you and listen to whether they're able to digest this or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can take bites out of the apple and lay it out there and say, here's a little nibble. How do you like that? Is that good? Mm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have the whole pie. You can buy the whole pie if you want it.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, kiddo. Thanks. This has been fun so far, right?
Yeah, it has actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we'll see you next time. How's that?
See you next time. Next week, same time, same place?
Well, probably so. What a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Thanks for watching. The Intro to Rewrite Masterclass Workshop on-demand videos will be available for purchase in our store soon. Follow us on Facebook at Forging Agreement for workshop release date announcements. Link in the description below. Before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to stay up to date for new videos.